Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd, and these are my thoughts about Matrix 4, Matrix Resurrections, and there is no doubt it's the worst Matrix movie, very disappointing in many ways, very lazy with its special effects, with the fight scenes, and the writing itself. It's basically more of a remake, a reboot. It's basically following the same story as the first movie all over again, and it's kind of poking fun at itself. It's like a self-parody, and it's even very insulting in many places where they replace some of the actors and bring new ones who supposedly play the same characters, and they don't even bother to give an excuse for why it's needed. Like the Morpheus thing, at least they try to explain it somehow, even though that explanation doesn't really make sense. But then Agent Smith appears again, even though he was literally erased from the Matrix in the end of the third movie, and suddenly they bring him back in a new skin for absolutely no reason whatsoever, and he doesn't even serve any real purpose in the movie. So what was the point of that? It was just annoying and unnecessary. It's basically filler, and I felt it's an insult not to bring back the original actors who are still alive. So why not bring them? I get it when an actor dies, and so you have to explain why he looks different with a new actor. That's fine. That's what happened with the Oracle in the third movie. They had to replace her because the actress died, so that's fine. But if the actors are still alive, why recast them for no reason? That's simply annoying for absolutely no reason. And why didn't they bring back the Oracle, who was a very interesting character, and then they just explained that she's gone because the Matrix did the purge and they got rid of all the programs, and yet the Merovingian is still around, but he turned into a crazy homeless person. So that was annoying. Why not give him and Neo a fight scene? They were kind of setting him up as another villain in the previous movies, and he seemed kind of awesome, and yet they never had a fight scene with him. And so they have the actor back, and he doesn't do anything. He just stands around and shouts, sends some of his zombie and vampire friends to attack Neo, and that's it, and then he goes away. So totally pointless, all kinds of missed opportunities like this, and that's what makes me the most angry, because the Matrix as an idea, it's so rich with potential. There are literally countless possibilities of how they can play with this. It's literally a playground in which they can do absolutely anything that the imagination allows. Like, you can do absolutely anything inside the Matrix. You can create multiple different matrices, multiple different realities, and play with them and go from one to the other. You have an infinite amount of potential with this idea. It can literally be a whole franchise with TV series and movies, and you have endless possibilities. And yet what did they do? Exactly the same thing the first movie did, and in a worst way. And the way they play clip shows from the previous movies all the time, that was really annoying. That made me just want to rewatch the old movies instead of watching this one. Like, they literally had almost 100 different clips from the previous movies in this movie. I'm not exaggerating. About 100 different clips from the previous movies inside this one. Like, the movie is almost insulting to us, telling us that we don't remember the previous movies. We who came to see this movie, we don't remember the previous movies. We have to be shown all these clip shows from the previous movies to remember it. Otherwise, we won't get it. Like, it felt so insulting, and it was so lazy. It was like a cheap way to try to enrich this movie with footage from previous movies, because this movie didn't have enough stuff of its own. It didn't really progress anything. It was just a repeat of the same stuff in a worse way, in a cheaper way, and in a self-mocking way. It was a self-parody, so I would almost rather it be a total straight comedy. Just make it a parody all the way. Just do only jokes, do only parody. Then it will be more entertaining, probably. The way they did it, try to do both at the same time, trying to eat the cake and keep it too, it doesn't really work for me. So I didn't like most of this movie. The only parts I actually liked were somewhere in the middle, when they were outside in the real world and they actually progressed the overall story, when they explained, some machines are now on the human side, there was a civil war in the machine cities, all of that part, which was only a few seconds of the movie. That was the only interesting bit. That was the only bit that progressed the overall story and made the previous movies mean something, because without that bit, without that change in the machine society or whatever, because without that part, I would have said, then what was the point of all the victories in the previous movies? If they didn't actually achieve anything, it didn't really change anything, and they're all back to square one now, then what was the point of everything they did in the previous movies? They didn't achieve anything at all. So that kind of reminds me of what they did in the Star Wars sequels, when Episode 7 basically reset everything to pretty much how it was in Episode 4. Like, it's now again an empire ruling the galaxy, and a bunch of rebels trying to fight them, and it's the same story all over again. So that's how this movie felt like. Like, they're back at square zero, Neo is again imprisoned inside the Matrix and has to get out of it again, and it's basically the same exact story again. It's almost like an exact remake, almost scene to scene remake, the exact same stuff happening, and then when he's introduced to the crew of the ship, the hover ship, and it's done in a worst way now. Not only is it less original now, but it's done worse. None of them get developed after that. We don't get to know anything about any of them, they're just there for the action scenes and that's it. Compare that to the first movie, in which all those minor characters, each of them had some kind of moment to shine, each of them had something important to do later on. One of them was a traitor, one of them went out in a blaze of glory with rifles. Like, each of them had at least some kind of scene to shine, some kind of moment, some bit of interesting dialogue. But in this movie, none of them are important in any way. Like, they're just there to be there and that's it. So it's done in a worst way. I did kind of like the part with the sentient robots who are now on their side, and that actually kind of fixes a problem that was in the first movie when Neo was first unplugged by a machine, and yet that machine didn't kill him, it just flushed him down the toilet and then they picked him up. That part always kind of bugged me, because I always said, why don't the machines simply kill the humans they flush down to make sure they're dead before they release them, since they know about the resistance outside and all of that, so why don't they kill them? So I kind of explained it to myself in my head canon, that maybe that machine was hacked by the rebels, maybe it was working for them and so on. So the way they did it in this movie was that the machine that freed him actually was on their side, and so that kind of makes more sense than how it was in the first movie. And the other part I liked in the beginning of this movie is the whole idea of Neo not being sure if the Matrix is all in his mind or not, that he's been confused because it's all set up as if he invented it, and so he thinks he's going crazy and all of that. And that's something I always enjoy watching movies about. People with mental problems, not sure if reality is real or not. Movies like that is something I always enjoyed, and so there were some seconds, some moments in this movie that I did actually like with that whole idea, but it could have been done so much better. And the big problem is that we all know that the Matrix is real. When we first watch this movie, we all know it's a sequel, we know that it's going to escape and all of that, so it kind of ruins that mystery. You know, when I first watched the first Matrix movie, I didn't know anything at all about it, I didn't watch the trailer, I didn't know anything at all about the plot of the movie, so for me it was very mysterious, for me it was very fascinating, even the beginning of that movie when it was all inside the Matrix and all of that, the whole mystery of it. And so I think the idea of this movie, of him not being sure if he's crazy or not, could have been excellent if it was a new movie, if it was a new character, if we didn't know it's a Matrix sequel, if it started out with some different title, with some different actor, and then we discover it's all in the Matrix, and then we discover that this person who thinks he's crazy actually is inside the Matrix, then it could have been so much better. So the potential was there for something interesting with that. And there were some, you know, that whole montage of his daily life and all of that, we saw that in the trailer. I thought that was kind of neat. I thought that had potential. They should have done more with that idea. It could have been good, but again, the problem that we came here is for a sequel, so we know that it's not in his mind, we know that he's not crazy, and so it kind of ruins that whole mystery, that whole mind game element of this kind of idea. So that's why it didn't really work, in my opinion, even though it had some potential. It had a few moments that I did kind of enjoy, and there were even a few moments in which Keanu Reeves was actually seemed like a good actor. For most of the movie he was not, but there were a few moments, you know, when he's questioning reality and all of that, when the water is pouring on him and he kind of is not sure if it's all real or not, and trying to figure it out. There were some moments that I actually did like, acting-wise. What ruined it again is all the actors they replaced, that Agent Smith is now this cool guy that is his boss or something, which is kind of, I think, a reference to the first movie when he had a boss who did kind of seem similar to Agent Smith. And so there are a lot of ideas in this movie that are similar to the first movie, and in some points I would even say maybe this is the better way to do it. Like, if they really did a remake of the first movie, maybe this whole idea of Neo not being sure if he's crazy or not, maybe that would have improved the first movie. But because we all know it's a sequel, it's all with the same actor, the same characters, and so we know that he's not just crazy, we know he's not imagining anything, and so that kind of ruins the whole idea that could have been good. And even for new audience who maybe not have seen the previous movies, maybe people who just watch this movie for the first time, only the first movie, for them it will be too convoluted because of the way they made the whole movie, that it's all dependent on you knowing the previous movies, and with all the clip shows from the previous movies, and the thing they did with Morpheus, that he's not really Morpheus, he's a new program that Neo wrote, all kinds of convoluted stuff they added, and it just makes it too confusing even for new fans. And so it wouldn't work for new fans either, and so what's the point to do the whole mystery thing in the beginning when it doesn't really work? It would have been better off to just jump right into the new story right away, faster, and just skip the beginning. So it makes me really sad and angry that this movie actually did have some potential, but because they did everything in such a lazy way, they wasted that potential. And even the resurrection itself of Neo and Trinity was explained away in some lazy way that, oh, the machines just resurrected them, and that's it. That's the explanation. There was nothing really clever about it. I could buy that Neo was easily resurrected because they had his body in their possession right after he died. Maybe it was possible. Maybe he didn't even technically die. They didn't. No one took his pulse and said he's dead in the end of the third movie. So it's possible for them to have fixed him. I could have explained that away, and because he was the one, I could get why he was so important. Even though it would still make the machines look deceptive, which would kind of ruin the third movie, because the whole idea, with the architect saying that he's not human, so therefore you can't trust what he promised, and so because only humans are the lying ones and all of that. And the machine's eyes turned green, and they seem to honor Neo in the end, and honor the peace they promised the humans, and they stopped their attacks. And so the machines were shown to be respectable in the end. Thanks to Neo's sacrifice, they basically turned good in the end. But this new movie tells us that that was all a lie, that the machines basically lied to the humans. It was just a temporary truce. They didn't really release humans from the Matrix later. It was all exactly the same, even worse in some ways, as the analyst explains. And they basically resurrected Neo and imprisoned him again without telling the humans, and so that seems like a massive betrayal. So the machines are not trustworthy as they were implied to be in the end of the third movie, so it ruins the previous movie and the ending of the trilogy. And it's much harder to buy how they resurrected Trinity, because Trinity died a few hours before Neo did and was left abandoned somewhere, and so how were they able to revive her if she died hours ago? It's harder to buy that they simply found her body and revived her. And for what? For their point of view, she was just a normal human, just like all the other rebels. There was nothing really special about her. This new movie kind of implies that it was their connection, their love connection is the whole idea behind The One. It was never just Neo, it was both of them together. And that's an idea I can live with. That's an idea I think is fine, because even in the first movie, the love story between them was a big part of it. It was her kiss that brought him back to life in the end of the first movie. So it was like a fantasy love story, love conquers all. It was their love that made the victory possible and all of that. So I'm kind of fine with this movie continuing that same idea. But the motivation of the machines to bring them back, just to experiment on them, to figure out what gives them that extra energy or whatever, it doesn't really make much sense. Why would the machines take that risk if Neo was so dangerous for them? Why keep him around again? Especially when it violates their promise to the humans. And so they did kind of explain it that the machines had the civil war, that some machines are good and some bad, and so the bad ones are doing it to Neo and not the good ones. And so I guess it can be explained away with the different factions of machines. But the whole idea that they did it all because they wanted more energy from the humans, that they wanted to figure out in what state of mind to keep the humans so they will generate more energy, that whole idea is kind of stupid. And honestly, that's one of the few flaws of the first movie. I think the first movie is a big masterpiece. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, but it did have some flaws. And the big one was the whole idea that the machines needed the humans just as batteries because they could generate infinite energy from them somehow, even though it doesn't really make sense scientifically, because you would have to feed them something. Energy cannot come from nothing. There was some quick line about it was combined with a form of fusion or something, so maybe they were using the biological bodies of the humans to regulate a cold fusion reaction. I guess we can explain it that way, but it never really made much sense. Why would they need the human brains working at all? Why not just have a bunch of cows' bodies in pods and that's it? You don't have to invent a very clever matrix for that to keep them in line and whatever. And so it never really made much sense. It would have been much smarter if they said the machines needed the human brains themselves, maybe to help them boost up their own processing power or something like that. It would also explain why the Matrix was so much hooked to the machine consciousness itself. How come Neo and Smith could be dangerous to the machines outside of the Matrix. So I wish it would have been explained better, but this movie sticks with the original line from the first movie that they just needed humans for energy, and that's why they cannot release the humans and all of that. And they're doing experiments on Neo and Trinity because it's their love connection that generates more energy, so they have to keep them close but not too close. And it doesn't really make sense, especially why they are together in the same tower. They have to be close physically in the real world and not just in the Matrix. And so it doesn't really make much sense. And another problem I had in the first movie is how casually they were killing normal people inside the Matrix. Like, I could get why they have to kill the agents, even though the agents also possessed real bodies of real people. So when you kill them, you kill the real person they possessed. But that was unavoidable because it was in self-defense and all of that, so I could get that. But the fact that they had scenes just shooting down police officers and security guards and all of that who are supposedly real humans, that always was annoying to me, especially when they never addressed it. They never apologized for that inside the movie. They didn't say it was a necessary evil because it was so important for their mission to save humanity, so they had to do it even though they didn't enjoy doing that. They never addressed it in the first movie, so it seemed a little bit immoral the way they were shooting innocent people who were not agents. And in this movie they do it again even more. In this movie they have a swarm mode of multiple people being possessed by the machines and acting against the heroes, and then they just kill a bunch of them, and they never raise this moral problem, the moral dilemma. So you want to save one person from the Matrix, and to do that you're willing to kill hundreds of people. I also remember that scene in the Matrix 2, in Matrix Reloaded, when Neo was flying quickly to save Trinity from falling, and because he flew so fast there were like hundreds of cars exploding all around him and all of that. So that always was funny to me as well, because didn't he just kill a bunch of people because he wanted to save one person? So isn't that kind of immoral? But yet they never addressed it, they never talked about that in the movies themselves, so that always annoyed me a little bit. And so in this new movie they do it again and they don't really explain it properly. They could have said that some of the humans inside the Matrix are not humans at all. Maybe they are programs, maybe all those cops and security guards in the first movies were not real people at all. Maybe they were programs just like the agents, and so killing them would be morally better than just killing innocent people the way it was shown in the first movie. So in this movie they have a swarm mode that basically all the humans in the area can turn into zombies controlled by the agents and attacking the good guys, and then you have to fight them. And it was also annoying how the fight scenes themselves were so lazy. Neo is basically doing a force push thing to push everyone away, and that's it. That's his only power, and that's what he's doing the whole movie, and barely does anything else. And so what a lack of imagination. When you have some idea like the Matrix, in which you can literally do anything, you can have any superpower you want inside the Matrix, and it would be logically okay, and they just do a force push. And so that seems so lazy, even compared to the previous movies when he had new powers. In the second movie he could phase his hand through things, and other characters had other powers. You had those ghost guys who could phase through things. And so you have the potential to do new things, especially since they say this is a new Matrix, this is a new version of the Matrix, so couldn't you invent some new power? The only interesting scene was when the analyst guy could freeze time and he could make everything move slowly, that even Neo couldn't overcome that. That was at least semi-interesting. At least it was some kind of new ability that someone has. So at least that scene had some kind of new idea in it. And it was kind of annoying how that guy was kind of gloating, he was kind of behaving like an asshole, but isn't he supposed to be a program, a machine? So why is he so human-like? And so all kinds of problems like that it could have been so much better written, and so it was really disappointing. And the whole idea that Trinity is the one and not Neo, and she's the one who flies in the end, I can get why some people might be angry about that, because that's what Hollywood is constantly doing now. It's always the woman who is the leader now and all of that. I think the way they did it here is kind of okay, because they never said she's the one and Neo is not. They simply said they are together. It was their bond that made the whole anomaly possible, and I kind of think it kind of fits the first movie as well, because she's the one who revived him with the kiss, she's the one who was with him and he was the one. So I think it can be okay. I'm not against the idea, but the execution of it, the way they did it, the way it was so rushed in the end, that's what ruins it. It was not really dramatic, it was not really emotional, it's nothing like the first movie when it had that reveal that Neo really is the one in the end. And so it's not even close to that kind of suspense and drama how the first movie did it. It seems much more lazy in comparison. And the fact that the plot of the movie, the whole plot is just about saving Trinity. Like at the beginning it was about Neo being inside the Matrix, thinking is he crazy or not, then being released. Then they had Trinity right there next to him. They could have saved her right away also, but they didn't. And then because they didn't, now they have to go back and save her as well. So that's the second half of the movie, is all about saving Trinity. There is not really a bigger story here. And for a sequel, for a number 4 of the series, for not to have any bigger story in the franchise, it's really laughable. Like the only story is just saving Trinity. So it's a hugely disappointing movie. It's such a big missed potential, and it's so insulting and annoying in so many ways, especially how they brought back the old characters for no reason and replaced them with new actors for no reason. It was just annoying needlessly. They should have left Smith out of it. They destroyed him in the third movie. They erased him. They literally showed every single one of him exploding. So how can they bring him back in a new skin? And for what? His presence was totally pointless, and it was just annoying for no reason. So overall, I think this is the worst Matrix movie. It's such a massive waste of potential that it's just mind-boggling how they could mess it up. How can you possibly ruin an idea like the Matrix and do such a lazy job with it? It kind of reminds me of what they did with Star Trek recently, because Star Trek is also an idea with endless possibilities. Your playground is literally the universe. You can go anywhere you want. You can have any kind of planet you want, any kind of reality you want. And instead of doing something new with it, you just retread, you just do the same exact stuff that was done a million times before and do it in a worst way and with no imagination, no new ideas at all. So the same here with the Matrix. You have the Matrix, you can literally have any reality you want in it, you can do anything you want inside of it, you're only limited by your own imagination, and yet you do absolutely nothing. Zero originality, zero imagination in this movie. Just repeating the same ideas that were done before in a lazy way, in a worse way than before. Despite 20 years of advancement in special effects, it all looks worse than it was before, and no new ideas at all, just the same ones and done worse. And so that's why it's so disappointing and insulting and annoying. The only good thing about this movie is that it makes me appreciate the old ones more now. Suddenly even the third movie looks much better in comparison, because at least the third movie progressed the overall story, at least it did have some new ideas, it had some interesting visuals, at least it did try to do something, it had some brave decisions, it killed off major characters, at least it felt like it's about something. And yet the fourth one just feels like a self-parody which is not funny, and seems like a lazy remake which pretends to be a sequel, which is really annoying. I think the most annoying thing in the entire movie is the Agent Smith thing, because it makes absolutely no sense. Why would he be there? They never bothered to explain why they need him there. Why they bothered to recreate him? Wasn't he completely erased in the end of the third movie because he became like a virus that endangered the entire machine society somehow, because he infected everyone inside the Matrix? So I guess he could control the entire power source of all the machines. That was the reason the machines made a deal with Neo, so that he will help them get rid of Smith in exchange for a peace with humans. And yet suddenly he's back now. Why would they recreate him if he was so dangerous? And so they never bothered to explain it. The actor looks nothing like him, except maybe a few seconds when he made similar facial expressions. Then I could see maybe a tiny bit of similarity, but overall it was just annoying and for no reason. It made absolutely no sense. And in the end he became a good guy helping Neo for some reason. Like, nothing makes any sense. And the most annoying part is the lack of attention to detail, because there was even a scene when Neo first walks into his office and sees this new Smith guy who's his boss, and then he's making the speech looking out the window saying, "Billions of people just living out their lives, oblivious." And then Neo is hearing that and he's having flashbacks to the scene in the first movie when Smith was saying that. The only problem was that Neo wasn't in that scene. He was saying that to Morpheus, not to Neo. Neo wasn't there. So how the hell can he have flashbacks to events that he hasn't witnessed? And that was probably the moment when I realized this movie is going to suck, because the makers of the movie don't remember the previous movies. Like, I remember the previous movies better than the ones who made this movie. And that was the moment I realized there's no chance, no hope for this movie to actually be good, because nothing in it makes any sense, and it's just annoying to real fans like me who actually remember the previous movies. How can you make a clip show of the entire trilogy without actually watching the trilogy? Like, you don't get what's going on? So that's probably the stupidest thing in the movie. I guess I can try to come up with excuses for that, saying maybe the way they merge in the end of the third movie when Smith assimilated Neo, maybe that's how Neo has the memories of Smith, and that's why when he was resurrected he knows the things that he didn't witness with his own eyes. He remembers it from the memories of Smith. I could come up with excuses, but the movie itself never bothers to do it, so why should I bother to do it? The movie itself never tries to explain anything. Nothing in it makes any sense. And the bigger overall plot is about nothing. It's just about getting Neo out, and the second half was about him coming back to get Trinity out, which is totally stupid, especially because they put them in the same place. They were physically right next to each other for some reason, And yet the guys who rescued Neo, who claim to be neologists and all of that, they claim to be experts on his life and know everything about him, they're big fanboys of him, and yet they couldn't predict that he will want to save Trinity as well. So why didn't they do it from the first place? Then it would save half the movie. So there is no bigger overall plot. And it can be argued, the first movie was also like that. It was also the first half getting Neo out and the second half saving Morpheus. Yes, there are similarities, but the first movie was the first one. It's setting up the entire stage of the movie, and the stage itself is so interesting with so much potential. That's why the first movie works. The second movie is just repeating the same stuff. And the only thing that could have been more interesting is that whole element of Neo thinking that he's crazy, and they should have done it in a way to make the audience also second guess it. They should have made it in a way that we would also wonder, maybe the first movies really didn't happen, maybe it really was all in the mind of Neo. And so that's how the movie should have done it. I love movies like that play with your perception, that play with your expectations, making you unsure, uneasy, movies like Total Recall, which had that whole element of making you unsure if the entire movie was actually all a simulation or not. The entire movie is set up in a way that even till the end you're not sure. Like the very ending is unclear, was it all real or not? And I love that. I love that kind of mind games of movies and making you think, is it real or not? And there was that movie, The 13th Floor, which was kind of similar to The Matrix, but with more layers, with more surprises. And so that's what The Matrix should have done. The Matrix is a franchise. They should have exploited the whole idea of The Matrix, of simulated realities. You could do so much with it, and you can and should surprise the audience with more layers. That's how they could have fixed so many of the mistakes of the previous movies. Not by saying that all the stuff that happened previously didn't really happen or didn't affect anything or didn't matter, but by simply setting up a bigger universe. You can simply say that what they thought was the real world was another layer of a matrix, another matrix to try to control the ones who escaped the first layer, and there is still a bigger reality outside of that which is real, or maybe there is no real reality. They could do so much stuff with the idea. That's what many people predicted and hoped the third movie will do, which never did. It was always just the matrix and the outside machine controlled planet, and that's it. And I think it could have been nice to add another layer, at least one more. You cannot do it endlessly, then it will become like a joke, like you can never believe anything anymore. But I think the 3 layers would have been fine, and that would explain that stupid mistake of saying the machines needed humans for energy, which is silly. They could have added another better explanation for why they needed humans, or maybe machines are not even in control at all. Maybe it's other humans controlling humans and the machines are just programs. And so you can play with all those ideas so much, or at least imply such an explanation to make us wonder, to make us think about all of this. Make it more thought-provoking, more intellectual, philosophical, and all of that, to make us think about it. That's what will make The Matrix more than just silly action scenes and adventure. You can do it about something mind-provoking, like mind-expanding, whatever you want to call it. And so that's why the first movie was so good. It wasn't just an excellent action movie, which it was, but it also had all those new ideas that done in a visually great way for the first time. That idea existed before that in many books and TV shows and all of that, but that was the first movie that really played with that idea well. There were previously all those movies about cyberspace and all of that, but they were done in a poor way and visually not that good, and so it didn't work. The Matrix was the first movie to really take that idea to the next level and show it properly. And yet this sequel totally failed to add anything new to it, and the only idea that was there but they didn't do it properly was the whole idea of Neo thinking that he's crazy, not sure if he is or isn't. That could have worked if it was done better. So that's my thoughts about all of this. Let me know what you think, and we can discuss all of this in the comments below, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.